Hey, good morning. Welcome to Throwback Thursday for November 4th, 2014. This is going to be the most difficult and longest Throwback Thursday I've ever done. But I think it's an issue that really needs to be talked about, both for children, teenagers, and especially parents and especially mothers. When I go out and speak, I always attribute teenagers and drug addicts to one thing that they have in common, and that's selfishness. All they think about is themselves. They're not trying to think about anybody else, especially their parents and their parents' needs, what their parents go through. Now, as many of you know, my mom is in my life, and what an honor and blessing to have my mom in my life after everything I've done to her. My mom and I have gone out and spoke on several occasions, and this letter I'm about to read has been read in many youth groups to many people. So many parents blame themselves for the trouble that our kids get into or the way that our children are raised, and there is some areas where parents are responsible. I mean, if you're growing the kids up and you're not being a part of their lives and you're drugging it and drinking and doing everything else, you are responsible for your children growing up that same way. Yes, children still have choices, but when you raise a child in that atmosphere, you're responsible, man, and there's no getting out of that. But then there's areas where parents, like at least my mother, not so much my father, but my mother, raised me responsibly. She loved me. She did everything she could for me, but I still went out and made the choice to destroy my life. And because of that choice, it destroyed my mother's life because she blamed herself. And I know there's a lot of parents out there, especially moms, who blame themselves for the way that their kids are nowadays. And I want you to know that if you've raised your child to the best of your ability, and your child wandered, whether you're a Christian parent or not, that child still had a choice to make, and it's not your responsibility for the choices that your kids have made. So I want to read this letter. I was in the 6 month intense drug and alcohol program at the Chippewa Prison as part of ERP, or release program. And at one point in our program, we came to this whole week where we focused on the people whose lives that we impacted. It was called Victim Impact Week. And we had to pick somebody in our lives that we negatively impacted and have them write a letter, at which time, when it came in, we read it in our counselor's office, and then when everybody got the letter in, we were supposed to read it as a group. Of course, I picked my mom, and of course she broke a record, man. She wrote 14 pages, and this was just the beginning. And when I got this letter, my counselor called me and she told me to read it. I got through the first couple pages, and I was just weeping. And I said, there's no way I can read this in a group. And there's a story around that I'd love to tell you. If you'd love to have me come into somewhere and read this letter to be part of a group and discuss it, or bring my mom with me and talk to, whether it's youth or parents, I'd love to, and I'd love to bring my mom. And my mom is also available, as some of you know, to talk to you one-on-one. If you want her phone number, private message me, and I can hook you up with my mom, and she can talk to you about how she dealt with all this and how she's still dealing with all this. So, excuse me, and I'm sure no matter how many times I read this, just like when I tell my testimony, it never gets any easier. So bear with me. So this is what my mother said when she wrote this letter. Dear Brian, this is going to be very painful for me to write. Through the years, I have tried pushing all the pain and heartache down into a deep part of me to try and forget. It all pretty much started when you started school. We were always getting negative reports about you, and when you would do something wrong, it turned your dad away from you. He would punish you, and it wouldn't be much longer, and you would do something else. We finally started going to family counseling, but neither you or your brother would share what was wrong or talk at all, so that was a waste of time. One time, when you were younger, when we left a store, you had a couple small items you had taken, and I made you go back into the store and return them and tell them you stole them. Another time, I had sent you into a store for something, and when you came back, you realized the gal had given you a couple of Susan B. Anthony dollars, mistaking them for quarters, and I made you go back and exchange them, telling you that was just like stealing because that girl hadn't known they were dollars. I guess I'm trying to state just a few instances where we knew you did wrong and made you face them to learn honesty. We took you to church and Sunday school and confirmation, and even during confirmation, many times I had to go and sit in the class with you so you would behave. In 1981, when my mother passed away from a massive stroke, after the funeral we went home and were working out in the yard and had been driving the tractor, and all of a sudden your dad was accusing you of deliberately running over nails. And before I knew it, what was happening, you and your dad were in a huge fight, and you were threatening to take a scissors after him and telling him you were going to turn him in for child abuse, and your dad told me to call the social worker. And you ended up being taken into juvenile hall or somewhere. I was so devastated. Here we just buried my mother, and then my son and his dad were in a battle royal, and you were gone. I cannot even explain to you the horrible hurt I was feeling. I can't even remember all the things you've done over the years. You have wasted with your rebellious attitude and continuously breaking my heart. Everything inside me wanted you, my own flesh and blood, to take a hold. You ran away several times, and then your brother started running away and acting out also. Our family was totally falling apart. It seemed that at that time I was the only one trying to hold the family together, but the more I tried, the worse it got. Your dad and I separated because we just couldn't get along, and either you or your brother moved into a place in Chippewa with me. One day when I came home from work, you were there with some other boys. You had skipped school, and there were bottles of liquor and who knows what else all over the room. You ran out the door and ran away again. At this time, I was working at the school as secretary for the school psychologist and special ed teachers, and the embarrassment I went through was tremendous. At one time, you were sent to Lincoln Hills Boys School, and I don't remember for what instance that was. Eventually, I moved back home with your dad, but through many circumstances, it just didn't work, and I ended up filing for divorce, and after 24 years of marriage. Can you imagine how I was feeling then, at the same time you were arrested and put in jail for a big sting operation for theft and selling stolen items? Out of 40 others that were involved, you got the most amount of time. Key point here. No one will ever know the torment, guilt of being a failure as a wife and a mother. How many times when I'm going to or coming home from work, how I wanted so much just to end it all and smash my car into a tree. And then I realized I couldn't leave that burden on my family. My mom, suicidal. Again, I turned to the Lord for solace. Then, at this time, also, your grandfather, my father, was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he had to go into a nursing home, and he did not want to be there. So I made a very hard decision of quitting my job and taking care of my dad at his home. I guess in a way it was also a way of escaping the continual embarrassment of facing people. I will say, if it hadn't been for the support and love from my co-workers and friends, I would never have made it through this time. My body was shutting down from all the stress I was going through, but I pulled through that also. And when my dad passed away, I made a decision to move back in the woods with my best friend who has always been there for me. I realize that happens is not about material things, but living as basic a life as you can with those you love and care about. Pudge was even very willing to have both you and Jeff share in this life with us, but all you both were interested in was drugs and a lot of foolishness. Right after my dad's passing away, your brother disappeared, and weeks later I got news that he was caught with a stolen car and who knows what else and was in prison in Mississippi or wherever. You were both spending all your young years in prison, marking your bodies with horrible tattoos, earrings in your face and ears, and you were into Satanism big time. I've had to say I was actually afraid of you. My mom, afraid of her own son. That I was afraid of you because at that time there was a lot of talk of human sacrifices and young people involved in that were killing their parents. Then you changed your name from Brian to Ozzy, but I refused to call you Ozzy. With the help of the Lord, I made 2 beautiful and perfect children, and you both have desecrated your bodies and destroyed your lives constantly without regards for yourself or others who care about you. You stole from my sister and brother, from other family members and friends, including myself, and then were angry about how you were treated with not a care about who you were hurting in the process. Sound familiar? It was all about you and what you wanted and needed. Then both you and your brother ended up having children without being married. I did not even see your daughter or realize for sure she was your child until she was 10 years old because you had told me you were sterile from all the drugs you'd taken. Now here's a key point a lot of parents talk about and ask themselves. I've been robbed of my sons going through school, graduating, finding a job, making a decent living, finding a girl, falling in love, marrying, and raising a family. She was robbed of that. There has been nothing to be happy or proud of. I've been lied to so much I don't even believe a lot of what you say anymore because you always lied and manipulated people. You've done many other things I'm not even aware of. Then came the next major devastation. You came back to Pudge in my home, and we were working in the heat out on the road, and you drove in with a pretty nice car. You said you came to say goodbye, that you and your girlfriend at that time were moving to Montana. Pudge asked if you had eaten anything, and you said no, so he said for me to go back to the house with you and fix you something to eat, which I did. Everything you were telling me that day were all lies. And then you went out to your car in the trunk and gave me your diary to leave with me so I could read it and find out about your life. And then you shut the trunk. Just then Pudge came back and you seemed really nervous and in a hurry to leave. You gave us both hugs and said you had to go, but then discovered you locked your keys in the trunk. Pudge was trying to explain how to get the seat out, but you just tore the back seat apart, not even caring about destroying the car. You finally managed to get back there and get your keys. We gave you hugs again, and Pudge wished you well on your travels, and off you went. When we came back in the house, Pudge was going to sit at a stool and noticed his gun was out of the holster that he keeps on his chair, and the first thought was you had to have taken it. I ran out to the car screaming and bawling over and over, "No, no, why would you have done that?" And I drove as fast as I could trying to catch up to you, but you were going so fast I couldn't catch up. At this point I wanted to die on the spot. I couldn't control my emotions. And I was shaking so bad. It was at this point we knew we had to report this to the police, so we drove into Cornell and reported it. At this time, the chief of police told us there was a warrant out for your arrest, and he wished he would have known I lived in this area because we may have avoided this mess. The next day we received word you had been apprehended in Minnesota unharmed, that you had gone to Cornell and shot your girlfriend's ex-husband through the arm and grabbed her and left and went to a motel in Minnesota. Supposedly you had set the gun down and she grabbed it and started shooting at you, and you grabbed the rifle and ran out. She had called the cops and they arrested you with no one getting hurt. Then the next time I heard from you was a letter you sent when you went to prison. And it mainly blamed me for reporting you for stealing our gun and giving your diary to the police. What kind of mother was I to turn in her own flesh and blood? I threw your letter in the stove and burned it. Then and there I decided there was nothing more I could do for you without destroying myself and my marriage, and I was not going to let that happen. I decided all that I could do was pray and let go and give it to God and take care of things and take care of myself. I went to a drug counselor to talk, and here he was a guy that had worked with both you and your brother before, and he told me in so many words I had to let you both go, and I had to quit blaming myself and start feeling good about myself and finding happiness in my own life and with my husband. He said both you boys chose your own path and are doing just what you want to do, and you would do just fine in prison practicing your satanic religion. When I left there, I was so determined to get on with my life. Enough years had been wasted by worrying about you both, and my health really took an effect with all the stress and depression. Her stress was so bad, one day she couldn't walk. She managed to crawl into her car, crawled out of her car, downtown, crawling on the sidewalk to go in to find out what was wrong with her, and all they said was, "It's stress." My mom crawled. I don't feel writing this has been a help because it's brought back all the horrible nightmares and things that have happened. It's like watching a bad movie. There is no way I can explain the effects this has had in my life as a mother. All the lies and thefts and drugs have made it so that I not only find it hard to believe anything you say anymore, it will be exceptionally hard for anyone whose lives have been affected by you. You've done nothing in all these years but lie and manipulate people, steal, practice your satanic religion, and blame everyone but yourself. I have felt like a failure for years as a mother. I tried teaching you right from wrong, telling you about the effects of drinking and drugs and family because of my parents and your dad's parents being alcoholics, but I sure feel like a failure. I've done the best I know how. I still go through times of deep depression, feelings of failure, and the embarrassment and humiliation and the hurt and anger. If you ask through this if I love you, yes, I love you. But I despise everything you've done and the life you've chose to live all these years. I've learned one thing from you and your brother both. And that is you both over the years in prison have become very gifted con artists by trying to make people believe in you with all your lies and schemes. This is why it's going to be hard for you and Jeff in the future. You're going to have to somehow try and gain people's confidence in you again. What you're going to have to do when you get out is work on just you, finding a job, getting a place to live, and prove you can make it on your own. And then, and only then, can you begin a relationship with Marcia and her son. You have to find yourself before you can be good to anyone else. Thank you, Jesus. Prove to yourself, once and for all, that you could get a job, find a place, get your own car, pay your own way in life honestly and responsibly. This is a tough thing to do. Prove to yourself you're a man and can make your own way in life without moving in with a woman and living off people. Trust in God and toward your goal in life accordingly. There's so many things I have not gone into, but it would take a book. All I can say is you need to do a lot of proving to others and yourself. I'm your mother. I love you, but I hate what you've done to yourself and others. I'm praying you have truly, truly made a life change and given your life to the Lord like you said, and repented of your sins, and I'm praying it isn't another one of your con games. Only time will tell. Love, Mom. Kids, if this doesn't impact your life, but to realize what you're doing to people, nothing will.